Hey everybody, welcome. I'm going to give you more time to discuss at your tables, but I just want to give you a discussion question to start off. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for being here, for just making the time. So thank you so much for what you do. Life groups are really just at the heart of what we do, right? The heart of our approach to help people connect deeper in fellowship, help them understand the Bible, help them experience life-changing transformation as they apply it to their lives, and really grateful for your work. So what I want to do is start with a discussion question. They're on the table. So as you keep talking on the table, I just want to kind of direct your attention to see this thing on the table, and it says on one side, ostriches, lions, zebras. Oh my. See this here? Okay, so these are metaphors that I have for what can happen in your life group. Okay, you all have ostriches, lions, and zebras in your life groups. Okay, and we're thinking specifically. This is not for amplification in the room. It's just for the camera. But I'll just talk louder for you. Okay. In your life groups. I want you to think about the discussion. As you're leading a discussion, I bet it's not always equal participation. Am I right? Who here has one person that does a lot of the talking, maybe 60%? Anybody? Okay, they're a lion. Okay? And I just want to, when you get to that question, it says, when lions roar, other animals go running. Do you ever have a lion in your life group who does most of the talking and maybe even roars on occasion? If so, how do you handle the lion so they don't scare the ostrich? Do you have a favorite way to redirect them? Okay, so that's a lion. Anybody have in your group somebody who is just they just never talk. They just sit there quietly and they're happy to be there, but they don't talk. Anybody? Okay, those are the ostriches. And you can see on this question it says, when in danger, the ostrich disappears. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but in the cartoons, they stick their head in the sand. I think in real life, they just run away. But do you have an ostrich in your life group that's quiet and disappears in the conversation? What are some ways that you found to draw them out and have them join the conversation? So you can have these moments where you have some people that are just very much reserved and they kind of disappear, and other people that are the opposite, they end up doing most of the talking. In my experience, a life group feels the most fulfilling when you have much closer, you're never going to have exactly equal, but as close to equal participation as possible, where the quieter people feel safe and comfortable and they think their opinions are valued and people want to hear what they say. Maybe sometimes they get called on, whatever your strategies are. But the ostriches pull their heads out of the sand and engage and talk and bring what they have to the table. And the lions, on the other hand, it's awesome that they're engaged, but sometimes someone can become so vocal that they take all the time and all the air out of the room, and no one really else has time. So other people are thinking, well, we're going late, so I better just not say anything, or the lion will make us late again. You know what I mean? Who knows, right? All those things. And the lion could be someone who just talks a lot, or it could be someone who talks in such a way that the room feels less safe, right? They talk in such a way that someone's like, well, I'm not gonna say anything after that, So you can think about that. The zebras. Okay, now zebras. Now I've done this training before with just lions and ostriches. I'm just sort of bringing in zebras as a third category. Okay, zebras have a unique survival strategy. Their camouflage. I actually just got a chance to see them in the wild. It doesn't blend into the scenery at all. But many people think that their survival strategy with the camouflage is it actually blends into each other. So if there's like a crowd of zebras together, a lion, it's a little bit confusing for a lion running. They all seem to be one big object, or they're running at one, and they separate, and it can give them an advantage there. Do you have zebras in your group that shy away from individual thoughts, preferring instead to blend in with the crowd? How can a life group leader best lead zebras? I remember a time, this is not a life group, but just on a church staff. I was on a church staff, and I remember there were several people on the staff that were just passionate. They were passionate about, like, we used to have those bulletins that you print, And in the old days of the church, they just inserted a ton of inserts into them. Like everything you wanted to announce, it'd be like a stack of like a bunch of inserts. But then what would happen is people would get them, they'd open them, they just fall all over the floor, just like this, always fall on the ground. I remember there were some staff members that were super passionate. You need to stop having these inserts, they just fall over the ground. And they became so passionate about it, they made a PowerPoint presentation for the staff with pictures of the things falling, and they were so passionate. Okay. Senior pastor at that time left, and there was a new interim pastor that came in, and I was in a meeting with these people, and someone said, hey, could we have an insert? Or the new guy said, hey, well, what if we put an insert in the bulletin for that? And every one of them goes, yep, great idea, we'll do that. Absolutely, let's do an insert. And I'm like, what the heck? What happened? Like, I know that you're so passionate against inserts that you made a PowerPoint presentation 3 months ago, but now there's a new boss, and you're like, yep, absolutely, let's have, what's going on, right? That can happen in life groups where people just, they're just natural tendency. I'm afraid of conflict, afraid of individuality. So sometimes someone might feel like the first person to answer, people, oh yeah, let's do that. But how do you allow a person who maybe have a different interpretation? Like, I actually don't think that's the right interpretation, or I just have a different way that I think we should apply that. How do you give them the freedom and permission and ability to just say what they actually think without feeling like they need to blend? Does that make sense? Okay, so what I want to invite you to do at your group is to discuss these questions. What are some tips and tricks about just the art of leading a discussion? If you notice that there's a lion, if you notice there's an ostrich or a zebra, what are some things you can do to just kind of help everybody bring their full selves to the table, kind of a more equal level of participation? Is there a way to kind of redirect the lines? Is there a way to invite the ostriches? Is there a way to give permission to the zebras? What have you learned? So we're going to take some time to discuss at your group, and then I'll field some answers. Make sense? Okay, let's go for it. As we gather together, I'd love to hear some things from the tables. So let's think of some of your best ideas that came to the table. I didn't have you pre-select those, but just things that come to your mind. Let's just throw up a few strategies. If you have an ostrich in the group. Now, what's interesting is how many of your groups, raise your hand if it's mostly on Zoom. Raise your hand if it's mostly in person. Okay, so we got kind of half and half. So probably these things, the venue, the mode of meeting is going to maybe affect how you handle these things. But let's hear one idea from each table here on how do you bring the ostriches into more robust participation. What do you guys have? This table, I'm going to bushwhack you with a spotlight here. What's something?
What do you do with an ostrich?
Yeah, how do you help an ostrich to participate?
So Jeff said, ask questions like, what do you think about that?
Okay.
Ask non-threatening questions, things that are maybe not so challenging, so they feel comfortable. And the other thing is when people, they have an experience with something, to ask them, so-and-so knows about that. Let's see what he says.
Yeah, okay. It's kind of like naming an expert or a connection, right? Naming a connection.
Or finding a place where they are comfortable.
Yeah. Sorry for my handwriting, but I can't make it better. At this point, I'm lost. Thank you. That's very good. Who wants to go next? Which table?
So I'll give you one by quieting down the line.
Quiet down the line.
Yep. That's a big deal.
Lions, plural.
So we kind of use the strategy, so my wife and I are both teachers, so we use a lot of the teaching strategies. One of the big ones is think, pair, share is what they call it. Mm-hmm. So you give everybody a minute, a little bit of time to think, and then you pair them up with one other person so that they're able to, share the idea, and then either they kind of get to talk through their idea, or they see someone else has a similar idea, so they're more confident in communicating what they think, and then that way when you get back together as a group, they're more likely to be engaged in the conversation and feel confident with what they are going to say.
it's a little bit like what we're doing right now.
Mhm.
So I kind of said a few things to set a table,
Mhm.
you have a breakout group, and then now you're saying something to the larger group. But within a life group, you could do it in pairs and come back or breakout groups. And we had some conversation about doing this like with breakout, if you have a very large life group, doing it with a breakout group, say in Zoom.
Harder to do on Zoom though, right? Are you in person?
We're on Zoom.
You are? So
Yeah,
what do you do, breakout rooms?
You do breakout rooms, you can have them just discuss with their spouse sometimes. Just kind of depends on.
Yeah, cool. Do we get your group yet?
Yes, we had talked about taking turns around the room so that everybody has an opportunity to speak up and have a voice. Although to go with the first arrow up there, how do you make it non-threatening? Reminding them that you can take a pass if you would like. So
Yeah.
that way they don't feel like they have to and they're in a position where they're not comfortable to share.
Yeah, that's good. When I lead a life group or a discussion group, I usually try to do this at the beginning. I find that the most difficult comment to draw from an ostrich is their first one. If you just kind of go in and you're halfway through your life group and they've already gotten the pattern of just silence, it's more difficult to get them just get that first comment out. But if at the beginning, so that's why we'll have like an icebreaker question built into life group materials. It's why if you're doing a sermon-based one, we'll say, hey, anything stick out to you from Sunday's worship service or from the sermon? Try to make, or it could be a funny question, but just something where you start off, we're going to go around the circle and have everybody share. And it's something that, again, you can give them permission to pass, but usually make that first question something that pretty much everyone's going to be answering. Like, what was the high and low from your week? Or what was, anything, right? That just feels like, if you could have a superpower, what would it be? And they go around and once they all speak the first comment, it's like they're looser. And then later when you get into dialogue about the scripture, it's easier for them to share. This one, that's a great approach. Quiet the lions. We're about to go to that one. But I just want to name it. Sometimes we are the lions, right? I mean, for me, this is a big challenge because I'll be interested. Oh, I want to talk about everything. I want to apply to everything, and I can easily just be the lion. And so sometimes it's the life group leader that fills every silence. Have you ever had a time when you ask a question and it's silence, crickets, and you feel awkward? So what do? You say, okay, well, I'll answer this one, right? And then you set up a pattern where you're going to fill every silence, and that becomes the pattern. You had a great, interesting thing about the clock, the seconds. People have different amount of time, comfort with speaking. Like, imagine that I ask a question and I say, I'm blanking on a question. If I just say, hey, what's your guys' favorite book of the Bible?
Philippians.
Okay, yeah, good. So you have the fastest clock in the room, okay? So, but nobody had a super fast clock because you're like, is it rhetorical? Is he asking? But if I just kept going quiet, and like eventually she comes in, I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna throw in, right? But if you didn't, 1 second later someone else's clock would have ticked, right? Like eventually people will speak. But for a lot of us, if we are a leader, if we have a discomfort with silence, we might ask a question in 2 seconds, I'm gonna jump in, right? Or it could be that it's always the lion is the lion because they have the shortest clock and they're trying to help you. They're like, I don't want it to be awkward, so I'm gonna come to your rescue and I'm gonna answer the question. And so, we mentioned that I've had this happen with prayer, if you do group prayer. Now, it's very awkward if you speak at the same time as someone else, right? Like we're all praying, we're going to pray, I'm quiet, and you always think, okay, I've waited long enough, surely I'm going to be the only one to speak, and then right then someone else jumps in, right? You've got a synchronized clock there. But we've just got to give people, certain people just need, some of these people, they just need maybe more more time, more quiet. I find that when you're in person, that the eye contact of the leader is one of the most important pieces here. So if you're having a conversation and people are talking, if the person who's leading the discussion looks over at an ostrich and you just look and say, like Dave knows, I just looked at him and I gave him a little nod and he knows he wants me to say something, but he's thinking, I don't want to say it. But sometimes that's enough where someone maybe feels like they have a thought and you can kind of see the furrowed brow, the furrowed eyebrows. Like, oh, yeah, their mind is like turning, you know they have something. But a lot of people's personality types are such that they don't want to feel like, they don't want to be perceived as being too assertive. You know, like why should I speak? Do I think that my thought's better than someone else's? And so out of humility, or out of kind of just their own kind of expectation, they kind of wait to be acknowledged. There's cultural differences, you know, in this regard, but sometimes just a look from a leader and a nod or speaking of their name, yeah, you know, yeah, Dory. You know, she's not asking, I'm just an example, right? But yeah, you know, just a little bit of their name or just an eye contact and a nod. Like things like this can just give them the extra kind of encouragement. You'll also probably notice that sometimes the more confident speakers a lot of times will say their thought to the group. But do you ever have it happen where somebody, like Dave, say you're the leader and someone is you're having a conversation, someone speaks and then they just talk right at the leader, the eye contact is at the leader the whole time? Mm-hmm. Well, that's probably, part of that is out of a nervousness, of a sense of like, you know, like I don't know how I'm going to be perceived, so I'm just going to like look at the leader. And you can just go with that and just nod and give a lot of affirmation, give them the eye contact. Don't look around awkwardly like, why is he staring at me? You know, like just yeah, that's great, awesome, you know. And just kind of a tool. So your eye contact and kind of facial expressions are a big part of just giving confidence to this. Okay, now this group said, in order to help the ostriches, you gotta quiet down the lions. As long as the lion is roaring, the ostriches hide or withdraw. So let's move to this, and let's talk about what are some ways to help the lion.
Well, I thought your idea of using the eye contact, saying, don't look out,
Yeah.
going on too long. It's the opposite.
Never look a lion in the eye. You're like, yeah. Mm-hmm. No, it is true, particularly when you're asking the question. When you're asking a new question, maybe don't look at the person who's been doing all the talking, but look over a different part of the room, okay?
Another one is for us is that we have the ostriches and the zebras, because you know you kind of know who's who. Have them share first, and then always give a lion the chance to answer at the end. So that way the other people are willing to express their stuff, and you know the lion's going to want to talk anyway. So you just let them tack on the end, or you know clarify something, or and then that way it's more of like a more supportive role.
How do you do that? Do you call on them or?
So you kind of just have to structure the way you're going about asking how people are going to share in the first place. Like, you know, say, hey, we're going to come to so-and-so, let's talk first, and then give, you know, do the think, pair, share thing first, and then have the ostrich people or zebra people share, and then, you know, once the one or two people you said want to call on, then it's open floor for anybody, and then the lions jump in after that.
Yeah.
Well, our lions roar usually first, so then we have to say, then we might say something like, thank you. Next question, let's have somebody who hasn't shared yet.
Oh, yeah, good.
Speak up, answer the next question.
Sometimes that's there's variants of this one. Like sometimes all the answers are coming from this side of the room, and all this, the ostriches are over here. That's awesome. You guys are rocking it. Hey, I'd love to hear from this side of the room. What do you guys think? You know, it's on this couch over here. You know, I'm curious what are the wheels spinning on this couch. You know what I mean? You can kind of direct it that way. Yeah, what else?
A suggestion here was to do a one-on-one conversation outside of the meeting time.
In which you are a lion tamer. What do you do in a one-on-one conversation with a lion? Now, this might be awkward for you because there might be a lion in this room. Maybe without a one-on-one meeting, but
I have had to do that in the past. Fortunately, it's just all women, right? So,
Lioness.
how? Well, first of all, you have to have coffee. I don't know. I just, it has to be a natural, to me, opportunity. I could set up an appointment, so to speak, but I think it's good if I can say, we love hearing from you, and I love your ideas, and if you can you next time watch for clues maybe to see who else might want to have something to say. I don't know. So that there's actually, so the responsibility really is on the lion.
sure.
To say, well, I could be softer, I could be gentle,
Yeah.
And
there's two different things that can happen to the lion. One of them is they just talk so much in space. The other one is they've roared in a way that they spoke in such a way that it makes it feel less safe. So let's talk about the first one separately. So if they're just talking a lot, probably they're trying to help you. They're like, no one's talking, I'm gonna help her out. So you can actually affirm that and then enlist them as a partner. So that's the most casual approach. That's when you think this could work. You can say to them after, hey, I just love how engaged you are in this study. That's so awesome. I can tell you're dialed in. It fires me up. Like, how do you think we can get everyone else to have your same passion? Like, how can we get everyone else to talk too? Let's see if we can work together on this. You're basically asking the lion for help. Hey, how can you and I work together to draw the ostriches out? So then, in that case, they don't feel rebuked; they feel enlisted. They're like, "Oh wow, I'm like a helper."
Yeah.
But and they were previously thinking in their minds, the way to help you is for me to talk. So it's not just so you're not on your own. Now they think, hey, we're colluding together to get these ostriches out. And so some of the ideas as you're kind of conversing with them, how can we do it? And they're like, you could say, hey, I'm always like asking that question. What if sometime you could throw out a question to the group? You know what I mean? So then they're thinking, oh, I can help in this other way by drawing someone out. Does that make sense? So that's one way. Now that works if there's someone who's just helpfully filling in the holes in an unhelpful way. Okay. If they're roaring, I mean, they go off on some tangent, and they go off on a politician and then they take the whole thing to the side, right? Or let's say that never happens in groups, right? They go, this country is going to hell in a handbasket, and then the whole thing just moves over to that side, right? You're like, this is not even what the Bible studies is about, right? I'm assuming there's a lot of laughter in this room, okay, this one. Let's say Don says a thought. He's like, well, I kind of interpret it in this. I think it's referring to this. And then, of course, Cheryl says, that's not it. You need to read that verse. Come on, Don, read your Bible, right?
So you were at our
Yeah. So then Don has his feelings hurt because he feels embarrassed because Cheryl just called him out, So okay, that's a roar, right? Somebody shamed somebody else, or laughed or scoffed. That's the one where I think go one-on-one and give them feedback and be like, hey, I just wanted to give you my eyes for something. I know you meant super well, but Cheryl, I think it's possible that Don got his feelings hurt when you told her when he doesn't read the Bible. So you could give that kind of feedback and just, but again, you need to assume their intentions are good, their character is right. You're not trying to call them out and say you're an evil person. You're just saying, hey, I know, you and I know you meant well on this. I'm just thinking that person might have gotten hurt, or maybe they felt less safe to share after that moment. And I just wanted to give you that input because I know that you wouldn't want that to happen. You see what I'm saying? So again, you're listening to them in partner, but you're just trying to give them that feedback. So, okay, so these are ways to, any other thoughts come to mind on?
So there's
Yeah.
one difference in the way that one-on-one can go, depending on whether or not they know that they do it. Because some people who are Lions realize it,
Okay.
and just need to be reminded, yeah, got it. On the
Oh,
other side, it's
yeah.
all the stuff we've been talking about.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe they're super aware of this, and all they need is just a little a little quiet, gentle, like, how would you exactly say it to
Sometimes it's
someone?
like a little high side, like, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Once you've had that conversation with somebody, if it's, if you know them well enough to actually have the conversation, then in the group when it happens, you can use humor sometimes to just remind them, in
Yeah.
some way.
What
and-
would be a something you could say that is disarming? It's not over the top, but it's playful, but gets the message. What would be a way to do that? I'm blanking on that.
Did you like hear the rolling of a blind?
Oh.
What'd you say?
Yeah. Depends on the person. I don't know.
We didn't hear it.
Yeah.
She was saying, like, if you're in the life group, would you say, "Do I hear the roaring of a lion again?" It might come across strong unless it's like a certain group that like is super comfortable and that's kind of an inside joke and could go over. So.
Or like, wow, you really did your homework, didn't you?
Yeah. Yeah, let's hear from Don who didn't do his homework.
Or even read his
Just kidding. I'm sure reads his Bible. I'm just sure. Just an example. Okay. So that's good. Okay, so there's that. Is there anything on Zoom that changes? Like, does this become more difficult on Zoom?
You can always mute them.
I'm sorry, technical difficulty. Yeah.
You lost your connection.
Yeah, you just yeah. Sorry, Joe's been removed from Zoom. I don't know what happened. Okay.
I think I just see from experience, usually if the lion's on that run, that you can try to stop them, but they can't hear you because they're still on that run.
So you mute and you say, while they finish their comments, we're going to proceed with the conversation. No, obviously, so there's some level in which you have to if they're on a run and they're going, sometimes it's going to be more damage to the group than it's worth to try to interrupt. And so you just, I'll talk to them later, or when they finish, I'm going to go. Is there ever a time though where it's so detrimental to the group that you would need to just interrupt them and say, hold on, let me stop you for a second. And what do you think? What would it take to rise to the level where you would just interrupt them mid-rant?
Usually it's a political deal, and or somebody talking about someone else
Okay, good.
who's not in the group, right?
Yeah.
Says, no, you gotta stop that, knock it off. Actually, that's easier for me to do on Zoom. Thinking about a
Okay.
couple of instances that, where we have a mixed group and, anyway. So the men and women group, not the ladies group, but it's much easier on Zoom for me.
So if there's some kind of gossip or slander that's happening, you might think that might be something you like, hey, let me interrupt you for a second. I think maybe we shouldn't talk about that. That person's not in the room. Let's hold off on that because they're not here to, let me go on to the next question. It's something where there might be time where it's called for you to interrupt something. So.
I just say, we're not going there.
Yeah. You could say like, hey, let's hold that one for the parking lot. Okay. Okay. All right. So, anything for the zebra?
I'll reiterate again, though, I think pair share, because with the zebras, if they have first of all, they're only communicating with one other person in the beginning, or very small group. So they're more likely to express something that might be different or thought-provoking or whatever with that smaller group, rather than hearing 3 other people say something different first and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm not gonna, everybody else is already thinking this. So gives them a chance to kind of get it, think through it, mature the idea if it's a good one, and then they're more likely to share it out later. After they've had that.
So they'd be like, well, that's interesting what you said in your group. Our group came up with something different, and they feel more confident because they got a group with them or a pair or something.
And sorry, to add on to that, and then a lot of times if they weren't normally going to say anything, someone else might be like, hey, you had a great idea, why don't you
Yeah.
let everyone else know?
Yeah.
I think just giving permission to have different ideas. That way you don't all have the same thoughts, and so you'd like to hear different ideas from the group.
Now, this sounds obvious, but what would be a phrasing of a thing you would say that gives permission? So let's say you asked a question, you kind of have multiple of the same answer. What could you say that gives permission for someone to speak differently?
I would just say, we all have different ideas, or we may have interpreted this differently, and so if you have something that's different than what was shared, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah.
That's
Or that there's no wrong answer, which is not always true.
Yeah, sometimes there's wrong answers. Have you ever said, hey, there's no wrong answers, and then someone says something so bad you're like, actually, turns out there is one. Good job, you found the one wrong answer. No. So give permission. There's some questions in which you could say there's no wrong answer to this, like what's your favorite superpower? There's no wrong answer to that one. How would you want to apply this to your life? Okay. But also specifically name it. Hey, did anyone else have a different interpretation of this? And name that. So, yeah.
And Matt, in that regard, instead of asking I would make, let's assume other people have other interpretations of this.
Oh.
What are they? Instead of a
Yeah.
yes, no,
Yeah.
do other people, who else might be work?
Yeah.
But no, yes, no questions.
Yeah, who has something slightly different?
Yeah, there you go. That's an interesting, graceful way where someone like when you say that, their answer doesn't sound like they're disagreeing. I'm not in opposition to their answer, it's just slightly different. You know, it's an interesting approach.
It's also, I'm more comfortable saying, what else would any of you add to this?
Yeah.
And that can go either way.
Yeah.
I think you could just say that there are different perspectives on this issue,
Yeah.
and that gives permission.
Now, would you sometimes maybe name 2 or 3 interpretations to set up the conversation?
Well, if I did, I'd be afraid that they'd say, well, that's the perspectives.
Oh,
And then you get no.
They're zebras.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
What,
you know,
can you make them,
The goal is to.
everybody has to take a stand on which one? Name the presence of differences. Okay. You know what I don't know what to write here. Okay. Okay. We're gonna name this, just the fact that there are. Yeah. Okay.
That's great. I think also thanking them for sharing, because then
Oh,
others
yeah.
will
Okay.
feel like, oh, the group is very, very much wanting my participation or wanting my sharing.
Yeah.
And that's also, I find, a nice way, because sometimes I feel like as a leader, I have to somehow give my opinion about what they've just shared.
Yeah.
And I realize over time, no, I do not have to every single time.
In fact, it's good. It's better not to, because that
Yes.
becomes a dialogue,
Uh-huh.
right? And you've probably all been in groups where the leader thinks they have to respond to every comment, and it's back and forth. You know, and then it becomes like more like this, where one person's standing up front as opposed to like a circle. You know, and you let someone else reply. You know, to that.
And then your group dynamic becomes, I want to make sure the leader agrees with me.
Mm.
And so either you have competition or nobody wants to talk.
I like the term facilitate better.
Mm.
Takes me off the hot seat for one.
That she likes being called a facilitator instead of a leader. Yeah.
And once the leader expresses an opinion, if they're really zebras, that's now their opinion, right? So.
Yeah.
Well, there's a quote, when 2 people agree on everything, only one of them is thinking.
That's good. Any other last thoughts on any of these 3?
This is my last thought. Years ago, when I was working with new teachers, I had an opportunity to watch a man named Henry Robinson do some teaching. And he would address his class of students and he would say, I am confident there are at least, in his case, he'd say, 3 young women and 3 young gentlemen in this classroom who have something to share. And then he would wait until he got the hands, and then he would proceed through asking these, what do you have to say? So I have done that sometimes. I have said, I'm pretty sure there's at least 3 opinions in this group. And then you wait. But you have to wait for the quiet person also. And then that person knows they have permission.
All right, thank you so much. I want to move on to some other items we have. This is good. I'm grateful for it and look forward to hopefully you guys can implement a few of these things in your groups. Okay, so we have a number of different items. I want to switch real quick to a preview of what's coming up in our sermon series. So how many of you have seen this? Have you all gotten one? And we have more here. So if you don't have it, please you can come up and grab one of these. So we're seeking to do this. What's that?
Do we need it right now to look at?
No, not really. Not really. You don't need it.
Right here.
So.
How many times did it pack it to
I don't
All right.
Yeah, this is my 8th place I've got with you.
Okay, so I want to just share a couple things with this. So you've noticed that since I've come, we've done this, I think, maybe twice before, where we pre-print the booklets, and I find that doing it on occasion helps kind of inject a little bit of energy. It can hopefully encourage some people to join life groups if they're not already part of one by promoting it in the thing. It just gives a sense of cohesion. Now, majority of the time, we just provide the life groups as we go. Lenny's been super helpful with that and helping me write your questions, make them better.
Yeah.
Grateful for Lenny. And we recruited reinforcements for this particular study. Gail wrote this book, so thank you for her. So this is the study of Philippians. I'm calling Resilient Joy. Is one that I taught once before. I did it in Florida. We called it Resilient Joy there. We did it as a summer study, that first summer of COVID, and so we actually didn't have our life groups meeting that summer. So we didn't have any life group materials, but I wrote this 12-week study in which every week of the series we're asking the question, how in the world is the Apostle Paul so joyful? The joy just is throughout the whole book. How is he so joyful when this is written from prison, when this is written amid suffering, this is written among, there's all these bad things that have happened. But he's got this overflowing joy. Like, what is the thing? So every week we ask the same question. What can we learn about resiliency for our joy from this letter, from this piece of this letter? So every week is like that. Just so you can see the graphic, I know that a lot of you asked questions about this last sermon series graphic. What the heck is that golden sun, right? And I actually, Edwin designed it, and I had him write something out, and I was going to share it, and I can't find it in my email right now. But it's really good. It's a really interesting artistic explanation of that graphic. This one's easier for me to explain, so I'll just explain off the top. So you have that's actually Troy. If you didn't know, Edwin's like, hey, can you just open up your hands? I'm gonna take a picture of you. So it could be Resilient Troy. But now here's the vision of this. This is a storm. This is a storm, and you can kind of see it a little bit more clearly on the back here. So if you open it all the way up, so you can see kind of the full picture here. There's a raging storm, and that represents the raging storm in our lives, right? Paul's in prison, he's been beaten, he's been left for dead, friends have deserted him, all these different things. And this happens in our lives. And yet you can see him standing in the storm, but kind of gazing up to heaven and feeling the light coming down from the sun, the joy coming down from God, even as he's in the storm. So it's like he's in both worlds. He's like rooted in the storm of the life, and yet also rooted in, the glory, the joy of heaven that's coming and seeing him through, so he can actually be in the storm and be joyful. So does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So, and that's what we want to be.
What are these two things?
I don't know. Those are blue circles. Those are blue circles.
There's two on
No,
the
it's
top.
started.
Yeah.
Edwin's a real artist.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I found those comments.
Oh, you want to read the comments about the last series?
Yeah.
Go ahead and read
So
it.
this is what Edwin said.
About the John series.
Yeah, so he said, the graphic incorporates both abstract and collage elements inspired by DJ's concept of night versus day. I used the words signs and glory to create a contrast. To emphasize the contrast, I divided the graphic into two halves using different colors and elements. The desert represents the location where Jesus walked, while the yellow circle symbolizes glory, or being a light in a dark world. The grayish rocks in the graphic represent a tomb and provide an excellent contrast to the yellow glory circle. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool, huh?
Yeah.
So, okay, so there you go. So, let you know, so in your life groups, people may have wondered. Now you can give them that, and you can also explain, to them the graphic and what that means. Okay. So, over the course of the 12 weeks, we're going to just be walking through, piece by piece, through Philippians, but I'll just give you a taste of some of the pieces. So in the opening, we're just actually doing the first two verses in the first week, which is just the to and from piece of it, right? And we're just exploring, how does he address them? He addresses them as saints. What the heck? Are they all Mother Teresa? Or they are made holy, made sanctified by Christ, and that's a root of his joy. And then how does he call himself? He calls himself a servant of Christ Jesus. And that is going to have a mark on his resiliency of joy, because maybe something goes bad in his life, but it isn't necessarily ruining the cause of Christ, whom he serves, and his glory. His joy is then rooted in the cause of Christ as opposed to his own personal experience there, right? And so we're going to explore just the to and the from, and how does that kind of orient us. The next one, week, the we'll get there. Let me. I have this more notes on my phone. Let me pull out. So this is the idea of he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. Like, things are not finished yet. We're a work in progress, and so not rooting our feelings necessarily in where things are, but where they're heading. Just a few other items I'll just hit along the way. So he rejoices at one point in unexpected progress, where he's like, look, my chains have caused the gospel to advance. So yay. And that's a different perspective for us, not just suffering. So suffering as fellowship with Christ, who suffered. We see finding a complete joy through humility and unity, replacing grumbling and arguing with joy and praise, like as a discipline to replace the grumbling and choosing gratitude and joy. He reflects at one point on forsaking the things of the flesh, the things the world puts their stock in, how he used to put stock in his academic credentials, in his circumcision, in his lineage, and he's instead leaning into grace, which is not going to wobble. He reflects on being a citizen of heaven, and so big rooted there. There's a piece on conflict resolution. There's a conflict that happens in the Philippian church, and he's imploring them to make peace, because one of the sappers of the joy in the church could be conflict. And so he's enlisting all of them to to all work together to make sure this conflict is solved, so it's not going to destroy the joy and mission of the church. He walked them through how to move from anxiety to peace through prayer, to put the petition before God. In Philippians 4, there's a piece where he's like, finally, brothers, whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, if anything's excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. It was my dad's life verse, so I ended up memorizing that in high school, and it stayed with me. It's like this idea of like putting our minds on good things, as opposed to Paul like just thinking through all the bad things that are going wrong, which is what a lot of us think about, right? And if you turn on the news, is it things going well or things going wrong? If you go to a coffee shop and people are talking around tables, are they talking about how wonderful things are or how everything's going to hell in a handbasket, right? So there's a natural tendency in us to think about everything's going wrong, and he like, what are some good, noble things to be setting our minds on, and how does that affect us? And whatever you have heard, received, learned from me, or seen me put into practice. You also have this transition at the end into thinking about giving. For all of us, even in the context of us going through trials, to change, to think of we are the sufferer to like we are the giver. We are someone who can provide for other people, and that changes your whole demeanor. When you find that, you know what, all along my life, but I was actually able to help somebody else, and that's a source of joy. So those are just a preview, just some of the weeks. Taking piece by piece. And so you can just frame it. If you're doing this with your group, frame it like, this is what we're doing, what we're after. We're trying to figure out how do we find the resilient joy that we see reflected in scriptures and live it into our lives. And throughout it, it's going to be navigating them in their relationship with Christ and how they live that out in the world. So it's discipleship, it's theology, but it's built into the question, how can I become resilient and joyful in a difficult world? So that's what we're starting next week. And we would invite all of you to do that and to follow along. People can use this on their own or as a group. When we have these pre-printed, it is something that you can encourage people to read ahead, to jot down some notes in their book so they have some thoughts. That is another strategy for getting the ostriches to speak, is if they had the questions in advance and they wrote some notes. It sometimes gives them the confidence to speak a little bit more. So, okay, so that's that. That's going to go through July 16th. So from next week, April 30th through July 16th. Then DJ is going to lead a 3-week series to be announced later, the theme. So he's going to be teaching all 3 of those, I believe. And I am going to be on vacation. Okay, so this one, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm thinking we will do starting July 23rd. So this one. So this is called The Justice Thread, and this is a book that I wrote when I was in Ghana. It's also the final project for my doctoral degree. So my Demon project thesis is like a thick book that has all the academic work and research around this, and then this is the deliverable. So when I was in Ghana, we had the challenge of being in rural places where village pastors, we wanted to enlist their help in rescuing kids from child slavery. And I had the conversation over and over again with the village pastor that would say, I'd like to help, but here's my situation. I have slave masters as part of my church. And so I'm pastoring a church with some slave masters and slaves as part of my church. And I've always thought there's something wrong about it, but I've never spoken about it, and I've never confronted the slave master because he's the chair of my elder team, my session. He's the biggest giver in our church because 1/3 of my church is either related to him or employed by him. And fourthly, he might beat me up or kill me if I oppose him. Or fifthly, maybe he and that whole 1/3 of my church connected to him will just leave and go to a different church, and then we will fold, right? And so I'm afraid. Okay. And so you end up with a gospel preached that is missing some key components. And some of these pastors would do evangelism work, in which they would share the gospel and say, hey, good news to the slave and the slave master, your sins can be forgiven, pray this prayer, become a Christian, and then they would pray the prayer, awesome, and then they would leave without naming the sin that he needs to repent from, without saying, oh, and by the way, part of this gospel is that you have to let go of your slave, you're now equals, you're now brothers, you need to go return this person to their parents, you need to make things right. You might not, you need to confess this to the police and take the punishment's going to happen. This is the path for you. This is what it means to repent, right? This is a way to restore justice to an unjust situation as part of our Christian life. But what we had instead was the pastor said, had no sense of that, and so it would just be, your sins are forgiven, okay, now I'm going to leave you in the current state. So this book is a Bible study guide designed for those pastors to go through and see the thread of justice that goes through the Bible from Genesis all the way through, and how it's part of our gospel, not a distraction from it. And but I think biblical justice is really also not understood very well in our churches. People throw the word justice around in all different ways, and they're confused by it, and many Christians feel threatened by it because of the way they hear that word used, and I don't know, it feels like a scary topic. But biblical justice and the heart of God who cares about justice is like a deep thread in the scriptures. And I want to, when we do this series, walk you through that and just see it in the law, in the prophets, in the kings, in the work of Jesus, and see how it folds into the other threads. Does that make sense? So look out for this one. This is coming. I wrote this for Ghanaians. It's deeply entrenched into their culture, so I got to figure out how to kind of like, bring it into ours. So even my own personal stories are changed in here into like village folk legend kind of stories. So we'll see how we tune that. Okay, and then finally, so that's going to be probably August 13th to September 17th, and then the series after that, September 24th to November 12th, is we're going to do something called Explore God. Now, this has been done in a number of cities in the United States in which a lot of churches from an area, like Austin, Texas is one of them. All these churches work together as a major evangelistic outreach event. And Explore God is coming to the Bay Area, sponsored by Transforming the Bay with Christ. It's a network of a lot of churches all around the Bay Area, and we've signed up to do it with them. There's going to be a big media blitz in the Bay Area with billboards and advertisements and social media posts, all kinds of stuff. Explore God, Explore God. And if people go to the Explore God website, it will help them find a church near them that's doing the Explore God series. Alpha Course is a partner with Explore God. This is kind of like a precursor to an Alpha Course. So that there are questions like, how do you know there is a God? How do you know if this God is knowable? Is Christianity too exclusive? Can the Bible be trusted? It's just basic questions that people that are not currently disciples of Christ might be asking and might be open to hearing a message about. So it's going to be an 8-week series in which we're focusing on just those really kind of questions that people that are not Christians might be asking. And we're just inviting non-Christians to come to the church, and they can find us through this Explore God, media blitz, and then come and we'll be going through those basic things. And then that's hopefully setting up for what we want to do is launch an Alpha Course next January. And people that we encounter through the Explore God series, we want to invite to then take an Alpha Course next January to just explore what it means, like the kind of foundations of Christian faith. Does that make sense? So anyway, I just want to give you a preview of all those things that are coming so you can make your decisions. Sometimes, some of your groups always do right along with the sermon series. Some of you always do your own thing, and others of you kind of go back and forth and sometimes do the same thing and pair it with Sunday, and then sometimes do something else. So I wanted to give you a preview of what's going on just so you have that to make decisions. So any quick questions on what's coming?
Matt, on September till when does it end, the Exploring God?
That ends November 12th.
Thanks.
Yeah. So Resilient Joy is April 30th. That's this one. April 30th to July 16th. And then there's going to be 3 weeks led by DJ to be determined later. Right now, the Justice Thread is scheduled August 13th to September 17th. And then Explore God, September 24th to November 12th. And then there'll be a little buffer, and then we go into like Advent. Yeah, make sense? Okay. Okay, I want to all right, pivot to one more, like a challenge that we have. So thinking about, we have these vision mountains for the church, ways that we've discerned we want to move, we want to grow. And one of them is about life transformation. Specifically, it says experiencing and sharing Christ-centered transformation. So our lives transformed by Christ, there's two pieces. We want to experience it, and we want to share it. And we've been reflecting as a staff team about how can we help people not just experience it, but also share it. People are afraid to share their story of their life transformation in their non-Christian settings. They're afraid to share it in their Christian settings. When we sometimes ask people, hey, would you share your testimony with the church? A lot of times it's no, that's too scary. I wouldn't know what to say. I don't have a story, or I don't know how I'll do that. So I want to invite you to join me in challenging your life groups. This idea, very simple, is that over the course of this year, 2023, we want to challenge our church to share their stories in a life group. So I want to introduce you to what I'm calling the 15-minute challenge. 15-minute challenge, okay? And the way it would work is for you to pick a season in your life group sometime this year and just say, we want to get to know each other better. We want to know how is Christ working in your life. And so we're going to give a 15-minute segment of each life group for, say, the next 8 weeks or something, depending on the number of people in your group. And we're going to hear from one person just share for 15 minutes about their life and how Christ has intersected with their life. How has Christ been at work in your life? Now, they may take a long chronological approach. Well, when I was 3 days old when I accepted Christ, or whatever. They could go that direction, or they could just hit a couple big moments in their life that were really significant. Or they could give a more recent testimony. Hey, this is this last year what Christ has done in my life. But the idea is just to give people a practical experience, sharing their story, sharing a little bit about their life in a vulnerable way and how Christ has intersected with that. And it gives, you got to set the feeling so that it becomes a safe place for that you're interested, that you want to hear that. And you kind of can model that. You could even be the first person, to share, if you think that's needed. And then just maybe have someone on deck and say, hey, I'll share this week. Jill's going to share next week. And then we just want to open it up and just see who we want to share next. I think we're hoping to get 100 people in our church over the course of this year to share their testimony for 15 minutes with a group. And then what we'd love to do is we want to keep hearing stories in worship services. So we're hoping for 10 people to share their story, not the full 15 minutes maybe, but just to share for a few minutes about how Christ is working in their life in the worship service. And so if your group does this, and there's kind of sharing in your group, you might be able to let me know about someone who, this person, they've got a great story, and this would be really impactful. This might be one that you want to do in a worship service. And you can ask them, and we can talk with them. So we're hoping as a way to kind of work to be sharing more stories and all of us growing together in our ability to articulate Christ at work in our life. For 100 people to share their stories in life group and 10 of them to share up front in a worship service. You guys have any questions about this? Yeah.
Just that we need you to report to us if somebody shared so that we can know if we get to that 100 number.
Yeah.
Can we pair it and then everybody
Yeah. You gotta
take one night and pair, and you have the whole life group doing it? Or you want an audience?
No. What's that?
Or do you want a bigger audience versus just paired sharing?
Oh, I see what you're saying. You mean could it be just everyone pair up and tell your story for 15 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that could. Yeah, I guess my gut. I mean, I don't know. Like my gut would be like, it might be better to be in groups of like 3 or 4 than 2. Yeah. So if you have a group of 17 and you want to be like, hey, we're gonna split in half to do this, or split in thirds or whatever. I think you probably want like at least 3 or 4 people there, so it's a good kind of practice. So, yeah. Some of your groups have already done this. You know, you guys have already had times of sharing testimonies, but. So anyway, if you're down for this and you want to try this in your group, I can get like a more detailed prompt that you can give to the person to help them, give them some questions as they think to prepare. People will be intimidated for like 15 minutes. I can't talk for 15 minutes, but you'd be amazed. Like most people, you just get them talking. They could talk for an hour about their life, but they don't know they can do that. And so this is a part of discovery. I've interviewed 70 people in this church where I just sat down with them and just said, hey, tell me about your life. And I found almost no one struggles to fill 15 minutes. I mean, usually those meetings end up being an hour and a half, 2 hours with just me and maybe two people. Because people have a lot to say once they just have that environment. So anyway, that's the idea. Okay?
Prompts would be great.
What's that?
I said yes, the prompts
Yeah.
would be great.
Okay. So I'll get you a prompt sometime in the next few weeks, just so you can kind of share with people. And I'll give you maybe like 7 questions or something they can just think about.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. We got a number. I'm going to try to move. I made an ambitious agenda. I'm realizing because there's a number of things I want to do. But yeah. Okay. So we're going to be going for, I was telling one of you, I think we're going to be going a little bit more, like another 20 minutes. If you've got to go, you've got kids to go help with, feel free to go ahead and we can catch you up on what you miss.
And then
Yeah.
it said 1:30.
Oh, 1:30, okay, 1:30. Perfect, so it's going to be 1:30. I lied to you, sorry. 1:30. I think we can go to 1:30. Okay. That clock's wrong. That clock keeps throwing me off. I think that clock has been stuck. So right now it's 12:59. Okay, I'm going to need a copy of that.
My daughter, Eva, really blonde.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
She just, well, yeah. She
Okay.
went, I think she's playing a little more cheese.
Okay, before you read it, I just want to frame this a little bit, okay? And then we'll read it through together. So if I could gather your attention back before you read it. Okay. This is a leadership agreement that we've rolled out, and we've done it with, Sue, can you help me know who's already looked at this?
The elders, the deacons, youth leaders, and staff.
Okay. So I want to introduce it to you. Okay, I can tell everyone just read it, so I'm just going to let you read it, because I'm not going to fight that. So go ahead and take a minute to read it, and then I'll talk. There is a back side if you haven't seen it. Okay, has everyone had a chance to read it? Just any more time, we're good. Okay, so if I can get everyone's attention, put the paper down for a second. I just want to get your eye contact for a minute, please. Why have a document like this? I've found in ministry over many years that there's a lot of times where there are certain expectations that a church has for leaders that often can go unspoken until they're broken, right? And I've just, someone is just living in a certain way or believing a certain thing or behaving a certain way that in their view is totally fine and appropriate for a leader to do. And maybe most other people would think that you can't do that if you're a leader here, but we've never spoken it, we've never had that conversation, and so then it becomes difficult to try to address when it's just kind of an after the fact, nothing ever written down, right? So I found it's helpful to just have some basic expectations and kind of agreement for the people who are in spiritual leadership positions for us to kind of be on the same page on some things. On the other hand, I've also seen it all the way to the other side where someone just becomes this kind of Pharisaic, like detail, oh, you have to be pop, you have to perfectly align, and no one feels like they could ever be qualified to lead, or it's just like you're in, you're out. So what we've tried to do here is write a document that's full of grace, full of love, full of relationship, that initiates interpersonal conversations with people. It kind of sets up, here's kind of what we expect. And you'll notice on the back of it, it doesn't say, yes, I agree, or no, I'm leaving the church, right? It's like, yes, I agree, or hey, I'd like to have more questions. I'd like to have a conversation. And so what we like is for people who are in spiritual leadership roles. So this is not like if you're just kind of volunteering to set up chairs or you're serving in a capacity, but if you're a leader in a spiritual way in which you are charged with spiritual care of other people, which is what you are as a life group leader or a life group facilitator, you have some leadership, some responsibility, some spiritual care for other people. Those are the group that, so a youth leader, a children's ministry leader, teacher. These are the kind of people that were elders, deacons, that we're inviting to read through this and either sign it or have a conversation with us about it if there's some piece that feels at odds. So, we worked hard on this and went through different rounds with staff, with elders, refining this over the course of the last year. And then as we rolled it out, we kind of, for different groups, we've learned more from it and have continued to refine it. It doesn't list everything that can go wrong. It doesn't list every possible area of disagreement. It just has, here's some 4 key things that seem to sometimes rear their head and cause some division, cause some concerns and just kind of misalignment. One of them on the sexual behavior one, I've had times where someone who is a leader, you kind of just find out, oh, they're living in a relationship, with a sexual relationship with someone they're not married to, and from their perspective, that's all fine, but from the church's perspective, no, we believe in fidelity in marriage or chastity and singleness, and so this is not really in line. And so how do we handle that situation, right? Well, we'd always want to embrace the person who want to be part of our church. You want to come and fellowship with us, attend worship, absolutely. But we're not necessarily going to ask you to be a life group leader if your life is you're just doing that. We think, hey, this is probably not the season for you, to be a life group leader. If you have a strong, outspoken belief that's in contrary to the beliefs of the church and are actively kind of on social media saying, can you believe my church thinks this, but bullcrap, whatever. Like, that's not going to be the best thing for one of our leaders to be doing on social media. Or to be on social media showing a life that's very in contrast to the life that you're showing people in church. Sometimes, drug abuse can be one of those items. And then interpersonal behavior, I actually think this is the one item that pops up the most. You have a leader who's gossiping about another leader as opposed to actually bring their concern to the person they're upset about and having biblical reconciliation. They're kind of going behind their back. And so these are just some of the things that pop up the most. So we just want to have a document that just has a general sense of here's kind of what we expect from our leaders. And if you find something in this document you think, I don't feel good about that one, we're not saying you've got to lead a church. We're not trying to be all, we just want to have a conversation with you about it, and so that can initiate that kind of pastoral conversation, and we can explore that together. So there's plenty of time to engage with this individually, like if you have individual questions, but any thoughts or basic questions on just that you want to ask now with the group? I saw thumbs up, I saw some crickets.
Is this a one-time deal that we sign it? Like if we signed it in Deacons, do we sign it again or?
Yeah, if you've already signed it, you don't need it, but we're kind of thinking of just kind of doing it maybe once a year, like, but if you've already signed it, we have it, so don't worry about that. But we might once a year on every leadership team, just kind of bring it out, review it. So it's not like, hey, 5 years ago I agreed not to gossip against people, you know, but I forgot about that, sorry. Like every year we just kind of, okay, just a reminder, this is kind of what we, you know, things we care about as leaders. So, yeah, so, okay, if anybody has questions about this, feel free, I'd love to talk with you. Again, I just want to have a grace-filled, honest conversation about this, so just let me know if you have any, if you want to follow up with that. Okay, DJ, come on up. So, if you don't know, this lovely young man, his name is DJ. Okay, so, DJ is going to be, what's that?
We're wearing like the same thing.
DJ is the new and improved Matt. Okay? Younger, better looking, better ideas. A full beard instead of the spots that I would have. Okay. Okay, so I've asked DJ to take over leadership of life groups. So we think he's not working hard enough, and so we're going to add stuff to his plate. No, just kidding. So DJ is really passionate about life groups. I'll let him share about that. He's been like, yeah, he's bringing up a lot of ideas lately. Hey, we can do this or that. You know, he's really excited about life groups, really believes in them. And he's been, for a long period of time, extraordinarily carrying the weight of the world in his hands, because when David Doe left, then he had to take over directly leadership of junior high group and high school group, as well as his family pastor ministry responsibilities. We've got Troy in place who's leading those, and DJ still oversees Troy and has some hand with the youth ministry, but it allows DJ to kind of, you know, come up and think, okay, where can I engage and add some energy. So at the same time, we're having some staff transitions. For example, Philip. What's Philip's official job title is?
Finance and Operations Manager?
I always say it wrong, so thank you. Finance and Operations Manager. So, you know, he and his family are going to be moving to Idaho soon, and he helps a lot of finance and different things. And so Sue is going to be taking on most of the work that he does, and as well as when Mark Simmons left, the answer was Sue is going to be taking on most of the work that Mark did. And we have a couple of assistants that are awesome, and we're able to hand things there. But the answer can't always be add more things to Sue. Yeah. Sometimes the answer has to be, hey, some things that Sue's been doing, we're going to shift to somebody else, right? And so, anyway, so that's one of the pieces we're going to do is DJ is going to take on leadership of small groups. And so I've been doing some kind of upfront leadership in these meetings, and then Sue does everything else. And we're going to gladly hand that work off to DJ, who's going to just do awesome. Right?
Slowly.
Yeah,
I still plan
yeah.
on working very close with Sue for the next
Not closely with me, yeah.
Like-
Okay, so DJ, so I want to just hand it over to you, where you can kind of just share a little bit, whatever you want to do. We have, we're breaking at 1:30.
I know he left Yeah.
Yeah, do you want that clap?
I like rushed. So I was over at the youth meeting and I was like, I gotta get over to that other meeting. I think they're hitting my bullet points. And I came over and I was like, oh, he's still on the he's not
do you
even
want me
close.
to erase this so you can use the whiteboard for your thing?
No, this is helpful so I don't look at certain people and I have to ask what some people think. I don't have a lot. I was gonna do like a brainstorming thing, but I don't think I'm gonna do that for this piece. I don't need to convince you all that life groups are important. I'm like preaching to the choir here a little bit. Jesus was like the ultimate small group leader. He wasn't running a mega church. He had 12 guys that he spent his time with. And he had difficulties, even with one of them. He had difficulties with all of them, but mostly one of them had some extreme difficulties. So if you're doing all right in yours, you're right there with Jesus. So you're doing great. I just want to, at least, like Matt said, communicate. Like I really believe that, come to church, I think is important. Worshiping together as a body is important. But I think if someone's not in a life group or not in some type of community where you are sharing deeper than a surface level, I think you're just going to kind of plateau in your walk. And again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but if there's not that level of kind of rubbing up against one another, challenging one another, teaching one another, encouraging one another, I really think people are missing a lot of it. And I know not everyone here is in a life group. Not here. Everyone here at Christ Community Church is in a life group. You're all in a life group. And so one of my hopes, again, I'm not taking everything from Sush and dumping a folder on my desk and saying good luck. I plan on working very closely with Sue. I plan on Lenny, I wanted to get coffee soon. I'm letting you know this now, to talk through some things and try to help those who are not connected to get connected, whether it's to one of you or to start something new. And also trying to help. One of the things of taking off Sue is checking in with you all. I know sometimes things happen. All of your life groups are unique and have really unique challenges sometimes, really unique personalities. And that, I think trainings like this are great, and I want to also do those, but I also want to check in and go, what is your unique situation, and how can I, if not I help, find somebody who can, to manage how to do this. Because, like I said, I think there's the tension of life groups can be this beautiful, life-giving entity, and they can also be the most frustrating thing, because you're dealing with people, and you're not just dealing with surface level people. You're dealing with, hopefully, what's going on in their hearts. And so I totally understand the frustration at times. And so I want to at least give kudos to all of you for sticking it out as long as you have. I know some of your life groups have been going on almost as long as I've been alive. And that's no easy task. And so just my hope, just to reiterate, I want to do things where we brainstorm. I want to check in with you all and go, hey, what are their challenges, so that the next time we get together, maybe in September, before we, the new school year, before we launch another series, make sure that whatever training topic or topic we decide to discuss is something you're actually wrestling with, or something that you guys are experiencing in your groups. So honestly, my hope is just to connect with you all, phone calls, check in every now and then. I think you all are the easy part. A lot of you just run on your own, which is great. Starting the new ones and some of the leaders that aren't here and check in might take a little more nudging and reminders on their phone to get coffee with me and let them know. But just know I'm excited. I'm learning. Okay, I didn't come from my previous church with a thriving life group ministry that I started and built from the ground up, and so I plan on just having a lot of conversations. I plan on picking Sue's brain, picking Lenny's brain, what's worked, what hasn't, picking all of your brains, what's going on, what are the challenges, what do you need, and how can I help? So that's what I got. I don't have a future training idea because I haven't talked to you all yet. I don't have a set date. I have some possibilities in September, but that fills up quick. And I know I think the justice thread is what we're talking about doing. No. The Explore God series. And that'll be unique because not all of you will go through it or choose to do that. But I do want to connect. I want to create regular check-ins, both as a group and then one-on-one with you all. Does anybody have any thoughts for me? Questions for me? Letting it hang?
You want to ask her about possible things, just a quick brainstorm of what they might want training on?
Sure, we can do a popcorn sesh. What's been the toughest thing or the challenges that have come up in life groups, other than a lion taking over or not? Yeah. Anything come up? We'll connect. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We've got some people in the group where the life group is not their primary priority, and so they miss, or they leave early, or show up late, and I don't know what if anything to do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna pretend that, man. Yeah. Yeah.
For next session, right?
Any of you turn around on a Sunday morning, it's the same thing here on Sunday mornings. I don't know if that's a busyness problem or a commitment problem. Uh-oh. I have that nervous action where I think I'm going to misspell something because I'm doing it in front of you, so please. Yeah. I think that's good. People are overcommitted nowadays. The fact that you all are here is pretty impressive.
You're just too intimidating, DJ. Everyone's scared.
Fear's weird.
I think also it's we're pushing 1:30 and you guys are like, "Ah, if I talk with me, it's no longer. I don't want to do that guy."
Well, we just have this big thing about the ostrich and the lion and the zebra. No one wants to be the lion, right?
We're all ostriches right now.
Yeah. It's funny, I think in some of our staff meetings, I'm more of an ostrich because Matt made the comment about getting the questions ahead of time, which helps me. Yeah.
Not all the time. You know what I would be interested in hearing is, how do we groom more life group leaders? What's an effective way to do that? And I say that from our perspective.
You're like 40 people in your group, right?
On average, it's 17, right?
Yeah.
So we have a total registration list of
32, I think.
Yeah.
So
I think you guys are winning.
Not
Yeah.
even on it.
Okay, who's not in their group?
Well, I think that would be healthy to reevaluate. Well, what is it that we can do to encourage that? And I'm trying to be careful because when you're in the 45 and above crowd, I don't want to do it totally old school all the time. To say, are there better ways to figure that out?
Yeah. First thing is to start reading your Bible, Don.
Thanks, Dave.
I think one thing I've heard people in this group reference before is the transition, like the tension between the people who want to only be on Zoom versus people who love to be in person. And there's all these different solutions, like, for example, let's Zoom 3 times and then have a once a month potluck, right? That's a couple of groups do that. But then as things change, there's always the kind of continual renegotiation. Okay, are we ready now to go back to in-person, And so there's sometimes tension in groups between those pieces.
Yeah, even sometimes I've had some in my group not want the group to grow bigger. Yeah. Right, so
Yeah.
Things like that are helpful as far as thinking through that with all other leaders and how to respond to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, there's like the tension of like you're going deep with people, and then a new person, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's like they're invading our private space. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, or can be. Sure.
Yeah, I think the topic is, it's just transition, right?
Mhm.
We have a group, we start meeting, and you are comfortable, and then something changes. I think as life group leaders, how do we like spot the transition before it hits us? Our group is large, and we have this system of meeting on Zoom, and then once a month we have a potluck. But then we've noticed that we've had people who come who don't come on a Sunday. Like, we're not their church, but they come because they found us online. And so now they come on Friday, we're like, oh, they'll drop off. They haven't dropped off. Right? And then they have special needs. Like, they're adults some can be severe special needs. And that's a transition for us as a group, I think, because as leaders, we want to be open, but like even as group members, how do we welcome them and be patient with, like we can't unmute them, we can't mute them when there's a lot of background noise. But I think that's something, I don't know, I'm still trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and those are like practical. Yeah. Thanks. Those are good questions.
Just throwing out there, maybe I should get some training on how to read the Bible a little bit more.
Dave's not an elder anymore, so his authority has.
So maybe DJ, before you close in prayer,
Yeah.
If any of you feel like, oh, I can just sign this document today, if you could just give that to Sue, she'll pass it on to DJ in the folder that she's gonna slam onto his desk. If any of you feel like, I don't know, I just have some questions, I want to engage a little bit about it, then just let me know. I just love to talk with you or DJ. Either one of us would love to talk with you about any concerns you have about it. And that would be totally fine. So either way, you can hand it to Sue, or maybe just send an email to DJ or I and say, hey, I'd love to talk more about that one.
Cool. I'd love to pray for you all, and then send you out into the world. Heavenly Father, thank you for this group. Thank you for their commitment to you. Thank you for their willingness to serve in an area that is not always easy, but an area that we believe you have called us to. Thank you for their willingness to deal with difficult people and difficult situations, or awkward and uncomfortable conversations or moments. God, I pray that you would equip them. I pray that you would equip them with the words to say, with the patience, if that's what's needed, with kindness and gentleness and wisdom for all situations. I pray that going forward we might grow in our relationship with one another as we explore topics, as we build ideas from one another, as we encourage one another, as we equip one another as fellow life group leaders to do this work better. Pray that you continually grow us, that your Holy Spirit would continue to sanctify us and make us more and more into your image. Thank you for this time. Thank you for these conversations. Thank you for this food. And thank you for this church. We pray these things in your name.
Amen.
Amen.